In 2015, we left the rat race and went to the farm. We bought a 100-year-old farmhouse and 9 acres. After 3 years of extensive renovations, we can finally call ourselves College Hill Farm.
Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Today, we're planting pumpkins. We're going to plant our squash and pumpkins. Now, what we've got planned, of course, I could save my own pumpkin seed and all that, but when you get your seed like this, you see that? 4 for $1. Why do you save seed? At the end of the season, I go around to the dollar stores, and these were packaged for 2018, so it's not like they're old. But this year, we're planting pumpkins. Of course, I plant a Connecticut field pumpkin and a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. But now I'm going to try something new this year, and I'm going to plant it in the corn just like the pumpkins. I'm going to plant these gourds. They're called a birdhouse gourd, and if they do good, I'm going to dry them and hang them in the trees for purple martins to kind of help get rid of the mosquito population. On my homestead, Cutter and Deep Woods Off is the cologne of the day. Anyway, I plant that, and then something we plant every year and save, because these are long keepers. You can take these after you harvest them in the fall, put them in the basement, and you can eat them up till January or February. They start getting soft about February, and I wind up taking them out of the basement. But these butternut squash, my grandfather called them cushaws, but a cushaw is a different thing. But he called a lot of stuff by the same. And this year I did something unusual that I've never tried, and I'll save seed from these because you can't buy these local. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a spaghetti squash. And Crystal and I have wanted to try it out for a long time, so we're anxious to get at the spaghetti squash. So here I am in my cornfield. Now, inevitably, as you're going through the corn, some corn kernels just don't germinate. Now, or maybe my planter skips a hill or 2 hills. Maybe it gets stuck or something and it skips 1 or 2 hills. Well, that's just fine for me, because that's where I'm going to plant my squash and pumpkins. Because what'll happen is, you saw us, we planted the corn, then after the corn got up, we tilled through it, and then we planted beans, pole beans. They'll run up the corn stalks. But you want to let those corn stalks get up. I think mine were about this tall when I planted my beans, about a foot tall when I planted my beans this year, which it doesn't matter. As long as it's 6 inches tall, you can plant pole beans in them. The pole beans haven't germinated yet. We haven't had a rain in almost 2 weeks, so my little garden's real dry. It's ready for a drink. But I'll go through anywhere that there's a skip, and I will make a hill. I'm hoeing the corn today too. You can see there's some weeds in it. I know, you see all these homesteaders with perfect gardens with no weeds. Well, I'm not one of those. I'm a regular everyday person who homesteads. So, and I don't make any money off my videos, by the way. This is just something that I like to do. I'm not monetized on YouTube, so you don't see a commercial when my video comes up. I know YouTube has to make money, okay, or else YouTube won't be a thing. So if they put a commercial on there, I'm not worried about it. But I like it that they're not. So I'm going to go through everywhere that there's a hill. And by the way, I also don't make a living off my homestead. I'm a retired educator, so I live off my pension. Now, my wife is a nurse. She's retired. She won't draw a pension until she gets to be 65, but we're not there yet. So, okay, that's where I'm at. That's probably more information than you needed. We're putting the squash in, and everywhere there's a skip, I'm going to put a squash vine or a gourd or a butternut. And what'll happen is, as these go for the year, I'll keep tilling through this with my hand tiller. You saw the video about hand tilling. You can go back and look at it and how to set up a tiller. But you can till through this until the pumpkins get too big. Well, by the time the pumpkins are too big, the corn will be up as high as my ears. Okay? So the pumpkins will cover the ground, and the corn will already be getting close to harvest. And the pole beans will be about halfway up the corn. So by then, everything's set. You don't have to worry about tilling anymore. So my grandfather would have called it laid by. So that's where we're at. The pumpkins will cover the ground and take out the weeds. Mosquitoes are killing me this morning. The pumpkins will cover the ground and take out the weeds, and this is how we do it. As I hoe my corn, I get in the skip area, and I'm going to plant these spaghetti squash out here at the end of the row where the skips occurred, because I want to kind of keep an eye on it and make sure I get seed back. This is one of those things that you just can't go to the dollar store and buy seed. So I had to order these. So I'm going to plant it where I can kind of keep an eye on it. But I do it just like the video on planting zucchini and summer squash. You can go back and see it. But you create a hill in the row where there's a corn plant's missing. I've got a corn plant right here, and I've got another corn plant here, and in between those, there should have been 2 more corn plants. Well, they're not there, so that's what I call a skip. So I just take one, oops, dropped it. These are like gold, so I don't want to lose them. 1, 2, 3, 4. In that hill, I dropped 4 seeds. I just push them in with my hoe handle a little bit. Spread them out. Cover them up. Now tonight it's supposed to rain. Thank goodness we haven't had any appreciable rain. So I'll let the Mother Nature water them in. Now I've got another skip right here, and I'll do the same thing. Again, I'm keeping these out here where I can keep an eye on them. There's 4 in that hill. And lightly firm the soil. Now I do one thing different than when I'm planting summer squash or zucchini. The minute I put those in the ground, as I do with all pumpkin types, I go ahead and put a good dose of pelletized fertilizer on that hill. Pumpkins are heavy feeders. Now when I come through and till this in about a month, well, it probably won't be a month before I till it again. I'll probably till it before then. But when I come through and till after about a month, I'll give them another dose of this pelletized fertilizer. And before long, by the time the corn's as high as my head, these pumpkins will be so thick in the cornfield that most of the weeds can't prosper. So, like I said, the corn will be what Paul called laid by. So, I've got a lot to plant. I'll probably plant 15 or 20 hills in this corn patch, and that will, each vine will give me 5 or 6 pumpkins, and the butternut squash will give me a bunch of them. And then when the butternut squash is done, I'll come out here and pull the vines up and go through the vines and get the squash vine borers out of them and have a good time catching sun grannies. Bluegill to some of y'all. Okay folks, I've got 22 hills of pumpkins and squash planted. One thing that you ought to know, the way I do mine, and the reason I'll tell you the reason I do it that way. The way I do mine is I plant them in hills, you saw that. But I try and do it, the way I plant my corn, I plant it in 4-row blocks, try to, so it germinates well, so I get good full ears. But these old squash and pumpkin vines, they're huge. They get really big and really long. So what I like to do is I keep a spot between. You'll notice if you look right here, this spot right there is actually 4 feet wide, big enough for me to till with my tractor. Now that's in between 2 different kinds of corn. So what I try to do is I try to plant my hills in the center 2 rows. That way all 4 rows will fill out with pumpkin vines and squash vines, and still allow me to till to keep clear that space on either side of the 4-row block of corn. So that's just a little tip to make it easier on you when it comes time to harvest your corn, harvest your beans, all that stuff. Is if you've got it in a 4-row block, which my grandmother always said 4, it takes 4 rows for your corn to fertilize correctly, to fill out the kernels correctly. So in that, you just have to put them in the center 2 rows, and that makes them fill that whole thing with squash and pumpkin vines. Okay, on to the next thing. I'd like to thank you for visiting with us at College Hill Farm today. I hope you found our videos entertaining and/or informative. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on both Facebook and YouTube. Until then, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.